Hey everybody, Father Scott Vanderveer here with an extension of our last tiding that was about grace and mercy and compassion. Now the time has come to extend that a little bit. So let's just review what we talked about with grace and mercy and compassion, because these things can be sometimes used as synonyms, but understanding the depth of their meaning is really helpful. Grace is a gift. Mercy is a form of restraint, and compassion is a feeling that can guide us. Grace is a gift, usually from God, that is unmerited. So when we experience grace, we receive something from God that we don't deserve. It's just a free gift. Mercy is restraint. Mercy is when someone in a power position holds back from giving us a consequence that would have been natural for us. So usually God is the one we think of when we think of mercy, because God is the fount of divine mercy. But anyone in power can demonstrate mercy. Teacher to a student, parent to a child, police officer to a driver. And then there's compassion, the great feeling of care and concern for the suffering of others. So a good way to understand this is, grace is when God gives us something we don't deserve. Mercy is when God doesn't give us something that we do deserve. And compassion is the feeling of not wanting other people to suffer, for recognizing that other people are just as human as we are, and that just as we don't wish to suffer, we don't wish for them to suffer. Hopefully that's a little bit clear. The idea of grace being a gift, mercy being a form of restraint, and compassion being a feeling, a very wholesome feeling in the human heart. Now it's time to differentiate between compassion and empathy. Empathy. We talk a lot about empathy nowadays. Now at our school here at St. Mary's, SMSA, we often are talking about social emotional learning, and we're trying to help our students grow in their ability to demonstrate empathy. Empathy is standing in another person's shoes. It's different than compassion. Compassion is a feeling. Empathy is an orientation, a using of a feeling for something. So when I feel compassion, I am feeling a desire for other people not to suffer. I feel a sense of wanting the best for other people and wanting them not to experience what I wouldn't want for myself. It is the feeling that you have when you're thinking about the golden rule. May I experience a love for others that is the same love I want for myself. I would never do to someone else what I wouldn't want done to me, and I want to do for others what I would like others to do for me. There it is. That is the feeling of compassion. Empathy is when you actually put yourself in that person's shoes. You share in their feelings. Empathy is different than sympathy, because sympathy says, whoa, I feel sorry for you. I can't imagine what you're going through. Sympathy keeps us distant from someone, like, whoa, sorry, that must be awful. Empathy says, I'm going to sit here and imagine that I'm not that different from you. I'm going to walk with you in this. What is really interesting about empathy is that you suffer with the other person a little bit, because you think, oh my gosh, what if this were my mother who was going through this diagnosis? What if this were my child who was having this problem at school? What if I were the one who just had this relationship end or experienced this kind of physical suffering? What if I were the one who was evicted from my apartment? And you feel some of those feelings. What that means is empathy is something that we want people to be able to have because we want them to be able to stand in other people's shoes. But if you are a caring person, you also want to make sure that your empathy is not depleting you. Here's the story. I once, when I was an inner city school teacher in Boston, was invited to go on a compassion fatigue retreat. Compassion fatigue is a phrase that's often used in helping fields. I was going to say industry, but that's not the right word. It's a field, anybody who's in a helping profession. So as a teacher who dealt with some very hard and sad and difficult student situations in inner city Boston, I was invited to go away for a weekend for a retreat for those with compassion fatigue, which I've since learned is a popular phrase, but does not describe the actual goal. Because a friend of mine said, compassion fatigue, what is that? And I said, I think it might be for people who are sick of caring. And she said, don't you mean tired from caring? And I said, oh yeah, no, that's better. I thought sick of caring, like I don't want to care anymore. No, tired from caring. I'm tired from the feeling of caring and walking with people in such a profound way. Okay, so if that's what compassion fatigue is supposed to be, that is not compassion. That's empathy. In fact, now researchers are saying compassion fatigue is not real. Only empathy fatigue is real, because you may get tired of feeling the feelings of being in other people's shoes. That makes sense. But there's no such thing as being tired of not wanting other people to suffer. Compassion is an orientation toward life that says, I don't want you to suffer. I care about your well-being because you're a human being. Compassion is not tiring. It's a way of living that does not take anything from us. It, in fact, is life-giving because it feels good to be connected to other human beings. Empathy is a very necessary thing, but it is not something we can do without breaks. We sometimes need to step away from the crowd and from the suffering of others in order to not feel it so acutely. And then, after resting, we go back. I recently saw a picture that was in New York City being sold by a vendor. I almost bought it because I liked it so much. It said, when you are tired, learn to rest, not quit. Maybe you've met people before who are just completely fried from caring. And so they say, I'm done, I can't do this anymore. And that's actually not what we're called to do. We're not called to quit in caring. We're called to rest when we're tired from all of the feelings that come from empathy. I hope you found this interesting and maybe a little valuable. Perhaps it's still a little bit unclear, but upon some deeper thought, it'll make some sense. Grace is a gift, and mercy is a form of restraint. And compassion is a wonderful feeling, and empathy is a willingness to go there with people and walk in their shoes. Compassion fatigue is not a thing, but empathy fatigue is. How can we as Christians be empathic, but not let that stop us from knowing that compassion is always available at all times? How can we be grateful for God's mercy and show mercy to the people who are under our care and responsibility? And how can we be grateful for the gifts of God's amazing grace that has saved us and set us free? May God bless each one of you now and always.